Warning: Pop Rocks mixed with soda will cause your stomach to explode. This message spread through American schools faster than any PSA in history, despite being completely false, ultimately forcing one of America's biggest food corporations to discontinue a wildly successful product. But how did this seemingly harmless candy become a national scandal? Pop Rocks disappeared overnight only to mysteriously return years later in a story involving corporate desperation, scientific misconceptions, and one of the most damaging product rumors in American culture. This is the entire story of how a playground myth accidentally destroyed a $100 million candy empire. Let's first ask one of the most important questions. What if one of America's most controversial candies was never meant to exist at all? The explosive success of Pop Rocks came from what can only be described as a sweet laboratory experiment gone wrong. A reminder that sometimes our most spectacular failures lead to unexpected new innovations. In 1956, William A. Mitchell wasn't trying to revolutionize the candy industry. The General Foods chemist was simply attempting to create an instant soda powder, something that would fizz into a refreshing beverage with minimal effort. Instead, his experiment went wildly off course. Like a culinary firework accidentally ignited in his laboratory, Mitchell discovered that by heating sugars and mixing them with carbon dioxide at 180 degrees extremely high pressure, he could embed tiny bubbles within the candy matrix that would release with a distinctive popping sensation when encountering moisture. Mitchell wasn't just any scientist. He was a prolific inventor with over 70 patents, including household staples like Cool Whip, Tang, and Quick-Set Jell-O, essentially a mad snack scientist. Rather than viewing his failed soda experiment as a disappointment, Mitchell recognized the potential novelty of his crackling creation. The corporate executives at General Foods, however, weren't immediately convinced. Despite filing a patent for the fizzy candy on December 12, 1961, they viewed Mitchell's creation as a curious novelty, not a product worthy of major investment. The popping candy concept gathered dust in General Foods archives for nearly 2 decades, while Mitchell continued developing other successful products. That initial spark finally reignited when a competitor's success changed their minds. When another candy called Zotzi demonstrated significant market potential for popping sensations, General Foods executives suddenly remembered Mitchell's forgotten fizzy invention. Perhaps there was more to this popping candy than they'd initially thought. After nearly 20 years in corporate limbo, General Foods decided to test the waters. In 1975, they launched a market test in Windsor, Ontario, a strategic choice that would limit exposure. The product flopped. The results were nothing short of astonishing. Pop Rocks sold out immediately, creating a consumer frenzy that nobody at General Foods had anticipated. The limited supply and overwhelming demand created a fascinating economic phenomenon, a legitimate black market for candy. What originally sold for a mere 15 cents per packet was soon changing hands for as much as $1, nearly 7 times the retail price. The Windsor experiment had demonstrated that Pop Rocks wasn't just viable, it was potentially revolutionary. Following this unexpected validation, General Foods introduced Pop Rocks to the broader American market in 1976. The manufacturing process Mitchell pioneered trapped carbon dioxide bubbles within candy crystals, creating a product that remained stable on the shelf but activated upon contact with saliva, an interactive experience that delighted children across the country. The public response was extraordinary. In its first year of nationwide release, 1976 to 1977, Pop Rocks sold an estimated 500 million packets. What had started as a failed attempt at instant soda had transformed into one of the most successful candy launches in American history, a testament to the unpredictable nature of innovation. What makes this success story even more remarkable is how close Pop Rocks came to never existing at all. Had General Foods not observed the market potential demonstrated by rival products, Mitchell's accidental discovery might have remained forever locked in their patent archives, a curiosity that never reached the public. While America was falling in love with a candy that fizzed and popped in their mouths, a dark tale was taking shape on playgrounds across the country. The strange chemistry of Pop Rocks made it the perfect subject for childhood speculation, but no one could have predicted how a simple misunderstanding would escalate into a nationwide panic centered around one of television's most recognizable child stars. "Hey Mikey, he likes it." The catchphrase from Life cereal's iconic commercial had made John Gilchrist, the adorable freckle-faced boy known as Little Mikey, a household name. His skeptical brother's surprise at his enjoyment of a supposedly healthy cereal endeared him to millions of American families. This brief childhood fame unexpectedly cast him as the central character in what would become one of the most persistent product rumors in consumer history. The playground legend transformed from innocent candy curiosity to macabre myth almost overnight. Like a viral campfire story that grew into an inferno, the tale claimed that little Mikey had suffered a horrific death after consuming Pop Rocks and soda simultaneously. According to the story, this combination created a chemical reaction so violent that his stomach exploded. The rumor spread with remarkable efficiency through schools nationwide, despite having absolutely no basis in fact. What made this particular rumor so believable was a fundamental misunderstanding of how Pop Rocks actually worked. Children and many adults assumed the candy contained something similar to a baking soda and vinegar volcano experiment, an acid-base combination producing a dramatic reaction. The fear was that mixing this candy with carbonated soda would amplify the effect to deadly levels. The scientific reality was far less dramatic. Here's the actual chemistry. Pop Rocks contain tiny pressurized carbon dioxide bubbles trapped within sugar crystals. When these crystals dissolved in saliva, they released the trapped gas, creating that distinctive popping sensation. A single piece of Pop Rocks contained approximately 0.2 milliliters of carbon dioxide, while a 12-ounce can of soda contains around 2.2 liters, more than 10,000 times the amount. The candy posed no danger whatsoever. Facts rarely defeat a compelling story, especially in the pre-internet era when information traveled slowly and verification was difficult. The rumor gained momentum through pure word of mouth, spreading from child to child in cafeterias and on buses. Misinformation traveled with remarkable efficiency, despite the absence of social media or even widespread telephone use among children. By the time adults became aware, the story had reached epidemic proportions. Child psychologists note that candy-related horror stories hold a unique appeal for young minds. The combination of something pleasurable with potential danger creates a thrilling cognitive dissonance. Children naturally test boundaries and explore taboos, and these candy legends offered a safe way to process fears about danger and mortality. The Pop Rocks rumor joined other playground legends about spider eggs in bubble yum and worms in McDonald's hamburgers, all sharing themes of contamination in familiar foods. Little Mikey was the perfect protagonist for this tale. As a commercial actor, he occupied an unusual space, immediately recognizable, yet essentially anonymous. Everyone knew his face and catchphrase, but almost no one knew anything about John Gilchrist's actual life. This created perfect conditions for rumor proliferation. By 1979, just 3 years after Pop Rocks' nationwide release, General Foods found itself fighting not for market share, but for basic credibility. The exploded kid rumors had grown from playground chatter to a legitimate public relations crisis affecting sales. As concerned parents began calling the company and contacting the FDA, childish misinformation transformed into something far more threatening to the product's future. From schoolyard gossip to national emergency, the Pop Rocks crisis forced the FDA to establish something they'd never needed before: an emergency candy hotline. When was the last time a government agency had to step in to reassure the public that a simple candy wouldn't cause their children to explode? The federal government's response was truly unprecedented. The Food and Drug Administration established a dedicated telephone hotline in Seattle specifically to address parents' concerns about Pop Rocks, essentially creating a 911 service for carbonated sugar. A specialized government emergency line, not for poison control or disease outbreaks, but exclusively to reassure panicked parents that candy wouldn't detonate inside their children. This represented bureaucratic absurdity born from mass hysteria. Meanwhile, schools across America implemented defensive measures. Principals and school boards banned Pop Rocks from school grounds entirely. The candy joined cigarettes and weapons as contraband that could get students detention. Some schools even sent warning notices home, inadvertently lending institutional credibility to complete fiction. What began as whispered warnings among children had spread into full-blown parental terror by 1979. The playground mythology had successfully bridged the generational gap, transforming from something kids say into something parents fear. General Foods watched helplessly as their sugar-based novelty candy morphed in the public imagination from a fun treat into a deadly weapon disguised as confectionery. General Foods found itself fighting for its very reputation. Their response was comprehensive. The company placed full-page advertisements in 45 major publications nationwide, an enormously expensive campaign in pre-internet days when print media dominated information flow. These weren't subtle promotional pieces, but desperate pleas for rationality, essentially begging the American public to believe basic science over playground gossip. In what must have been a logistical nightmare, General Foods drafted and mailed approximately 50,000 letters to school principals across the United States. Each letter meticulously explained the actual chemistry behind Pop Rocks and implored educators to help stem the tide of misinformation. Corporate executives approved this massive expenditure, not to sell more candy, but simply to convince people it wouldn't kill them. Perhaps most telling about the crisis was General Foods' decision to pull William Mitchell, the inventor of Pop Rocks, out of retirement. The company sent this distinguished food scientist on a nationwide speaking tour to personally demonstrate the safety of his creation. This elderly chemist traveled from city to city performing the same demonstration, eating Pop Rocks, drinking carbonated beverages, and remaining alive to prove to frightened parents that their fears were unfounded. The media's role proved particularly problematic. News outlets ran stories attempting to debunk the Pop Rocks myths, but these well-intentioned reports often backfired. By reporting on rumors that Pop Rocks can cause your stomach to explode, even when framed as false, they introduced the concept to new audiences. The existence of the FDA hotline became a story itself, with headlines lending an air of legitimacy to what should have been dismissed outright. Every effort to quash the rumors amplified them instead. Scientific explanations fell flat against the emotional power of, "But what if it hurts my child?" General Foods found itself trapped in a nightmarish loop of diminishing returns, spending more money on damage control while watching sales figures continue their downward spiral. This case revealed the limitations of both corporate power and scientific authority when pitted against parental anxiety. General Foods had resources, scientific evidence, government backing, and a living inventor to demonstrate safety. Yet none of it mattered against the unstoppable force of a good story and the protective instincts of parents. When a product becomes synonymous with danger, no amount of corporate damage control can save it. By 1983, General Foods faced a sobering reality. Despite their candy's meteoric success, Pop Rocks' reputation had become irreversibly tainted. The rumors had won. In a quiet announcement that barely made headlines, the company discontinued the controversial candy in the American market, not because it was dangerous, but because parents believed it was. This corporate surrender happened despite Pop Rocks' remarkable commercial performance. A product that sold hundreds of millions of packets was abandoned due to persistent public perception, not poor sales. The candy that once commanded black market prices had transformed into a liability for its parent company. With warehouses full of unsellable inventory, General Foods made a strategic decision that would inadvertently write the next chapter in the Pop Rocks saga. Rather than destroying their remaining stock, they redirected it to international markets where the deadly rumors hadn't taken hold. While America trembled, shipping containers filled with the dangerous candy made their way to Australia, Great Britain, Ireland, and Korea, where consumers awaited with curiosity rather than fear. The international response revealed the Pop Rocks panic as an exclusively American phenomenon. In these foreign markets, there were no rumors of exploding children, no emergency hotlines, and no panicked parents. Pop Rocks was simply an innovative treat that created an unusual sensation. Korea, in particular, embraced the candy with unexpected enthusiasm. The response was so overwhelming that by 1985, General Foods shipped actual manufacturing equipment to Korea to meet demand. The very product American parents treated as potentially lethal was being manufactured locally in Korea to satisfy consumer enthusiasm. Meanwhile, in America, the candy's disappearance from store shelves created an unintended consequence. Rather than putting rumors to rest, the product's absence seemed to confirm suspicions. "See?" parents would say, "they must have pulled it because it really was dangerous." The FDA never issued a recall, but in public imagination, Pop Rocks had been forcibly removed for safety reasons, exactly what General Foods had spent millions trying to disprove. The saga continued when Kraft Foods acquired the Pop Rocks brand in 1985. Recognizing both the product's potential and its problematic reputation, Kraft attempted rebranding through a subsidiary called Carbonated Candy. They reintroduced the product as Action Candy. Same formulation, different name, like putting a new costume on a recognized villain. But Kraft discovered the fear had transcended the brand name itself. Parents worried about any candy that popped in your mouth, regardless of what it was called. The rebranding attempts were failing. Action Candy struggled in a market still haunted by urban legends. Despite Kraft's considerable resources, they couldn't overcome what had become a deeply ingrained cultural belief. What makes this story remarkable is how rarely a successful product is abandoned due to rumors alone. Most discontinuations stem from actual safety concerns, manufacturing defects, or declining sales. Pop Rocks represented something different, a case study in how perception destroys reality. The candy was scientifically proven safe, FDA-endorsed, defended by its inventor, and beloved by millions of children. None of that mattered against a compelling story. The contrast between American and international reception reveals something profound about mass hysteria and cultural belief systems. The identical product was simultaneously considered dangerous in one country and delightful in another. The difference wasn't in the candy, it was in the stories surrounding it. The dead child at the center of the Pop Rocks panic was alive, well, and playing baseball in his backyard while America mourned his fictional demise. Perhaps the most darkly comedic twist in candy folklore history. John Gilchrist, the child actor immortalized as Little Mikey in the Life cereal commercials, was living a perfectly normal life, while millions of Americans believed he had perished from a lethal combination of carbonated soda and popping candy. In perhaps the most absurd twist in the entire Pop Rocks saga, Gilchrist's mother would receive condolence calls from concerned friends, expressing sympathy for her son's tragic death. Often while young John was outside playing, completely unaware he had become America's most famous candy casualty. This disconnect between rumor and reality reached comedic proportions. While John Gilchrist grew up, attended college, and eventually built a career in media sales at MSG Networks, the urban legend of his death continued to circulate as established fact. The real Mikey had moved on with his life, but his candy-related death refused to die. Ultimately, science would puncture the bubble of myth surrounding Pop Rocks. In their very first episode, the Mythbusters team tested whether the supposedly deadly combination could rupture a human stomach. They recreated the mixture in a pig's stomach, which shares similar properties to human anatomy. The results were definitive. While the stomach expanded from carbon dioxide release, it remained fully intact. No explosion, no rupture, just fizz and mild expansion. The experiment confirmed what scientists had been saying for decades. The tiny amount of pressurized carbon dioxide in Pop Rocks is minuscule compared to what's already found in a standard soda can. The human stomach, designed to withstand significant internal pressure, was never at risk from this candy combination. The scientific demonstration exposed how playground rumors had vastly underestimated basic human physiology. While the candy had disappeared from American shelves, its story wasn't over. After General Foods discontinued the product in 1983, the rights eventually found their way to a Spanish company, Zeta Espacial S.A. With distance from the American panic, they recognized the candy's potential and acquired the brand. Under their stewardship, Pop Rocks would make an unlikely return to the market, now freed from the tarnished reputation that had forced its original withdrawal. The resurrection of Pop Rocks represents an unusual case study in product life cycle. Most products that suffer such catastrophic rumor-induced failure never return. Yet Pop Rocks managed what few consumer goods achieve: a successful second act after being effectively canceled by public opinion. Whether through time-healing public perception or growing scientific literacy making old myths seem ridiculous, Pop Rocks overcame one of the most damaging rumors in consumer product history. The once controversial candy has even found acceptance in modern culinary circles, transcending its children's treat status to become an ingredient in high-end gastronomy. Innovative chefs incorporate Pop Rocks into gourmet dishes, creating unexpected textural experiences in everything from cocktails to desserts. Upscale restaurants serve margaritas with Pop Rocks crusted rims, while avant-garde chefs have even paired the candy with luxury ingredients like foie gras. Despite occasional echoes of the original controversy, like a 2001 lawsuit claiming a child required medical intervention after consuming Pop Rocks in ice cream, the candy has established a global presence that would have seemed impossible during the height of the American panic. Today, Pop Rocks is available in more than 30 countries worldwide, manufactured using the same formula that once caused nationwide hysteria. The candy that vanished amid unfounded fear has transcended its troubled history to become a global confectionery mainstay. In our journey through the explosive tale of Pop Rocks, we discover a phenomenon that transcends mere candy history. This saga offers a potent lesson for brands navigating public perception. Today's companies employ transparent communication strategies to address concerns proactively. Modern brands leverage social media to combat misinformation, tools General Foods desperately needed but didn't have. In a world where a candy sparked widespread panic, what else might we believe without evidence? Pop Rocks survived its dark chapter to become both a beloved treat and a powerful warning. As viral content spreads at unprecedented speeds, this fizzy controversy reminds us to question what we hear, especially when it sounds too outrageous to be true. If you enjoyed this video, then you better click on this next one here to continue the ride down memory lane of the OG snacks and much more.